morning. Thank you all for being here this morning. We'll get to business. The first order of business is HB 2389, which is Delegate, who is this? Pillion's bill that the Speaker has directed us to refer this bill to Finance. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pillion might be opposed. So let's go to, we're going to ask Delegate Wilt to introduce to us Glenn Rhodes, and thank you for making your trip down this morning. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we have with us Mr. Glenn Rhodes. Glenn is a farmer for Rockingham County in the Shenandoah Valley. He is part of River Hill Farms and works with his parents, 2 brothers, and 4 nephews. They raise turkeys, operate a dairy, grow crops, feed beef cattle, and do custom harvesting. Their farm has received environmental awards from the local Chamber of Commerce and from the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. Glenn has appeared in several Virginia farming TV shows and in a Discovery Channel show called Powering the Future. Glenn has been active in growing, processing, and using alternative energy. He grows oilseed crops that are crushed for on-farm biodiesel production and burns biomass, including shell corn, barley, wood chips, and poultry litter to help feed the turkey brooder barn. 2 manure-to-energy projects have been hosted at the farm to explore burning poultry litter for heat and as a way to condense poultry litter into product that can be easily shipped out of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Glenn is one of 2 farmers that is partnered with James Madison University on a research project, which brings us to the topic at hand. Yeah.
welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. Appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity to come and speak about our project, and I'd like to thank James Madison for taking on this research project. The topic of hemp is kind of new and sometimes can be controversial. When you bring up hemp, people are often they equate it with marijuana, and no matter how many times you tell them that hemp is not marijuana, there's always a joke that comes up. So I'll tell you a joke. Some law enforcement folks found a big patch of marijuana, and they piled it up on a pile and they burned it, and a flock of terns flew through the smoke, and there was not a tern left unstoned. So that's my joke. I'd like to thank Dr. Renfro for facilitating the project and so on. We live in the Shenandoah a lot. Our farm, another little tidbit, since this is the Ag Committee, our farm was chosen to participate in a national advertising campaign. We grow turkeys, and our farm has been featured on some packaging and in some magazine ads. So that's been another fun thing, a Virginia farm. So on with hemp. This is an industrial hemp grower's license. A lot of work went into getting these approved and out, and it's kind of neat that is license number 001. We picked up our seed at the Virginia Department of Agriculture. It was a long road to get it there. A lot of work with the legal work. Dr. Renfro worked on a lot of that, as it was the Department of Ag. One thing I found interesting, got a call one day, and 3 agents from the DEA came down to interview us, and one of them looked at me and smiled and said, "You have protection, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yes." Well, I found out that I could not carry my concealed weapon because I was in a state building to pick up the seed, and then I returned to James Madison, which is a university. So the concealed carry thing didn't work out at all. So I didn't have protection, but it worked out okay. Here we're loading the seed. Dr. Renfro is in charge of the chain of custody on our project. The planting, we did a lot of calibration on the drilling equipment. This is a seeder. The purpose of the project was to see if conventional farm equipment could be used for this new crop. This is at Brian Walden's farm in Albemarle County. Here we're planting in Rockingham County. We use GPS on our farm, which attracts young folks to equipment they love, new technology. We can do yield mapping after the fact, and that helps with knowing how well things went. Here's a picture of the plant when it first started growing. A very exciting time for us to see plants coming out of the ground. It was planted very late in the season because of the trouble with getting the seed, but we did get it. younger seed plants growing. It's hard to see on the picture, but there's hemp on one side and weeds on the other. And it's a very good description. We put down no herbicide, but the hemp just outgrew the weeds, and it's just an amazing thing to see that with no herbicides.
We talking about a different kind of weed.
Yes, we are talking about weed. This would be lamb's quarter. Here's the crop as it was maturing. I'll move on. Here's a picture of male and female plants. The males produce primarily pollen, and the females produce most of the seed. One thing that will come up probably in the future is there's always conflict between actual medical marijuana growers and hemp growers. That dust cloud is pollen. If you're growing medical marijuana or even recreational marijuana, within a wide radius, this will cross-pollinate and will affect their crop. So often in legislatures, people come in, there's conflict often, but we're here primarily for hemp, and that's something you might see later. Here's just a picture of a mature plant with a few seed pods. Another photograph of the mature crop. Those are the Blue Ridge Mountains in the background. And again, we wanted to try equipment that we already have. This is our combine, a fairly large rotary combine. When you run a crop that's used for making rope through a machine that's called a rotary combine, there can be problems. We had a little bit of wrapping on some of the equipment, but overall it went well. Little plugging of the concaves and so on, but we did prove that conventional equipment works well. This is Brian's combine in Albemarle. It's kind of neat that I believe this crop will open up profitability to small farms again. There's lots of these small combines around in buildings, and I think that if we can get a high-value crop started in Virginia, some of these older machines will come out of retirement. Folks with just a few acres, 10, 20 acres, have approached us and said, how do we grow hemp? So hopefully in the future, that would happen. This is the seed we stored in a bin where we can dry it. Next year, if we do, we'll need to add some heat. We had a little bit of molding of the seed because we harvested cream. Here, the seed is being crushed for oil. This is in our shop room. And there's a picture of the oil. There's some sediment in the bottom of the seed particles. Now, here again, conventional equipment. This is a disc mower. We harvested the stalk and rolled it up into round bales. This is how you can tell if it's a hemp bale or not. It kind of leans a little bit. Another joke. And I possibly have rolled more cannabis than a famous country singer, if you look at that wagon. And here we're processing a bale just to see if we can get it again through a bale processor. This will be used for bedding. But hopefully in the future there will be a lot of opportunity. We've gotten phone calls from people saying, is fiber available? I have a new hobby, that's lobbying. That's Congressman Goodlatte. He stopped by the farm and introduced my wife and children to politics, so that was a lot of fun. And on the educational side, we did hold a field day to invite folks out that were interested, primarily government folks. And we've gotten a lot of press. We've been in a ton of newspapers and magazines. This is the Farm Bureau magazine. So it's been kind of, I'm glad my mother's still living to see this because she kind of was worried about me. A little history. This is a hemp process. These are two hemp processing stones in Rockingham County. Years ago, the fiber was laid in and crushed with these stones. So the industry is old. The town of Port Republic shipped hemp down the river. So it was an exportable commodity. The strange thing is we can go to the store, buy hemp seeds, eat them, but we can't grow them and sell them yet. So that's part of the push is to open this market up. And you can make money. A friend of mine sent this to me because they found this and thought this was terribly funny. So, you know, money just rolls in. And if you ever go back to wearing the powdered wigs, I can hook you up with some hemp fiber wigs. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that it appears that most of the opposition to hemp comes from other public servants. And the general public is generally twice, is primarily in support of industrial hemp. It seems like a lot of resistance comes from within government. So I would ask, just serve the people that want this. As farmers, we just need freedom and flexibility to search out markets, to react quickly. That's something I ask. And when you look at this legislation, if you think you're going to make a mistake, I to make a mistake on the side of liberty. We need too much liberty rather than too little liberty. And one other thing, the mantra in our society is reduce, reuse, and recycle, but the Creator says, be fruitful, multiply, and prosper. So this is a crop I think will bring more revenue into our country. And I'll tell you one last story. In 1764, along the Shenandoah River, there was a Rhodes family that was attacked by Indians and robbed and murdered, most of them. And a 12-year-old girl picked up a 15-month-old child and escaped through the hemp field to a neighboring farm and survived. So in our family, hemp saves lives. Thank you.
All right, I think we have, so we have a couple questions. Mr. Rhodes, we have a couple questions. So if you'd like to ask Mr. Rhodes a question, so hit our RTS button. So Delegate Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate hearing from a farmer who's grown it. It's, we know that you've endured the issues with it. I've got 2 or 3 questions. One, I noticed you green harvested. Why do you harvest when it's green?
We green harvest because the plant matures at different rates. So if you want to get all the seed, you have to go in before the mature seeds start dropping off the plant. That was really green and very unusual for a harvest, but that's why.
That's what I was wondering. It looked like it was. Yeah, what's the moisture in the seed at that time?
I believe it was about 20%, 18%.
Okay. Second question, wildlife, did they bother at all, deer?
Very little, no, we didn't notice. Had a few Japanese beetles and very little insect pressure. Again, no pesticides or herbicides.
And no deer damage?
We did not see deer damage.
And thirdly, Mr. Chairman, for me, water needs, is it a high water need crop or low water need?
That's part of what I guess we're researching. We watered it like we would corn. We have a pivot irrigation system. Our crop was planted inside of a cornfield, so we just watered it as we would corn, and it does respond to water.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes, Delegate Wells.
Where did you take your product, and did you have to, very similar to corn, dry it down to a specific moisture content for shipping, et cetera?
We used so far all the product on farm. Part of our research agreement was that we would use it on farm.
Okay.
So we crushed the seed for our own biodiesel production on farm.
Biodiesel.
Yeah.
All right, Delegate Knight.
2 questions. One, you said you harvested about 18%. What's dry?
Dry is about 8%, 8 to 10%.
Really? So it's a whole lot less than corn at 13.5 or 15
Yes.
for beans and wheat. Okay. And I saw your license, number 1. And I know that the first time you ever did a license, probably some hoops to jump through, but how much trouble was it for you to get your license, and do you see any downside to having that license?
I appreciate the question. Dr. Renfro handled most of the paperwork. I did have to ask my brothers and nephews to get background checked and fingerprinted. And I will just tell you up front, my family is primarily Mennonite, so I had to ask my Mennonite brothers and nephews if they minded going down to the courthouse and getting fingerprinted. And I didn't know how that would go, but it went well. I would like to see a site license where, like a pesticide license, where one farmer can hold the license and then they can oversee production. It's a little bit cumbersome to have everybody involved in the project needing a license. The background check apparently looked well on the fingerprinting, but it was just a little cumbersome. That was good. I appreciate it.
Delegate Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nitrogen and phosphorus uptake from this plant, is this similar to corn, do we know, or is anyone looking at that type of?
We are looking at that. Dr. Renfro can maybe address that. We took pre-planting soil samples and post-planting soil samples, and I think that information will be published, but I don't have the answer at this time.
Delegate Wright.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming today, and your presentation has been very informative. I noticed you said that Congressman Goodlett came to the farm, visited and so forth. That's one of the things that the farmers will need in order to really be able to grow hemp in a large manner, would be approval of the federal government. Did you get a chance to talk to him about that and see what he thought that the chances were the federal government lifting the restrictions on growing hemp?
Yes, obviously we did. He's chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and so any legislation will come through his committee. He did verbally say that he would support legislation to delist hemp and make it a crop. As you know, in politics, a vote is the only thing that counts, so we'll see how it comes out. There is legislation at the federal level that hopefully this year will be brought out of committee and voted on. So there is a decent chance that this will happen, but again, typically resistance comes from other folks in government. Even the DEA would like to be involved in regulating a crop that's not even a drug, so that'll have to be worked out, but he did say he would support that.
Mr. Chairman, you did mention resistance from government and really approval from the general public or support. What are some other examples of government resistance other than perhaps being concerned about at the local level having to inspect the fields and so forth?
From my experience, it's primarily law enforcement is concerned about how they're going to handle identifying a crop and distinguish it from illegal crop, illegal marijuana. There's some concern that you could plant marijuana in a hemp field and then hide it that way, but that's genetically very impractical. Dr. Renfro could explain that better. But primarily law enforcement is concerned about how they would handle a crop that's been illegal for 70 years.
Mr. Chairman, has there been any advancement as far as you know of in developing markets, places where you can actually sell hemp if you could grow it in a pretty large manner?
There's been a little activity in North Carolina of a fiber plant, but no one's willing to invest anything until the federal law changes. It's just too risky to put a lot of money into a project. So we're importing nearly everything. I have a friend in Canada. When I met him, worked for a company. He now hires 13 people in his little plant to process hemp seed into food. So there's just an example of one small person creating 13 jobs. So I think in the future, when the federal law gets changed, investment will flood in.
One final question or comment. With your experience in hemp this year, if you had the opportunity to grow it as part of your regular crop rotation, how many acres do you think that you would plant and so forth?
Well, we'll probably do another 10 acres this year if we're approved, just because it's a good amount where we can run through our equipment. In the future, I would like to plant, 100 or 200 acres if we have a market, but we do not have a consistent market yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Carson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned cross-pollination, and it makes sense that it would be viable to plant medical or recreational marijuana near a hemp field that was for agricultural purposes. But what are the dangers of that happening unbeknownst to the farmer, and this cross-pollination with the agricultural hemp being digested and being cross-pollinated with good stuff?
Well, again, I'm not the expert on this, but I believe that if it did get cross-pollinated the other way, it would affect the seed that's produced, and that seed would be used, and I'm saying it would affect the genetics downstream. I don't think it would cause a level in THC to raise. So I think we would plant certified seed every year from a supplier, so I don't think that's a concern. But again, I'm not an expert on that, but that's what I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might, 2 quick questions. Exactly what was your fertility program? Did you treat it very similar to corn, or as prescribed by JMU?
On one crop, we put no fertility down on 5 acres, and on one 5-acre plot, we put down 100 pounds of nitrogen just to see what the response would be. So that would be less than what we would put on corn, and it was just to get an idea of how well the crop responds to low fertility and medium fertility.
So similar to sorghum.
Yeah, it grew really well.
Then my other question was, I guess, did you see a difference in yield between the two in regards to the seed production?
I don't have the numbers, but there was a slight yield difference, but not nearly what I expected.
So I guess, so further question, Mr. Chairman. Sure. So I guess the question was 100 units of nitrogen really worth putting it down?
Well, I think, I don't have an answer, but that will be published and we'll find out. And also, you don't know what happens repeatedly if you didn't put nitrogen down. Our soil should have been in fairly good shape. So we were just looking for immediate response to some extra nitrogen.
One more question, Mr. Chairman. Do you know what your yield was, roughly?
We were about 800 pounds of dry seed, 700 to 800 pounds of dried down seed per acre, a little over 1,000 pounds of green seed.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Rhodes, thank you so much for taking your time to come down, and we might call you back again next year too. I see phase 2 of this, so thank you again for your work.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I appreciate y'all taking an interest in this crop.
Thank you so much. All right, Delegate Wilt, you want to introduce our next speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also with us, we have today Dr. Michael Renfro. For the sake of time, I will acknowledge it as a very lengthy list of credentials, but I'll move right into the matter at hand. He teaches courses in economic, botany, and plant biotechnology, among other courses. His research interests span plant propagation through tissue culture, synthetic seeds, and antioxidants in plant-based foods and beverages. He's leading the JMU Industrial Hemp Research Program. He's a past president and elected fellow of the Virginia Academy of Science and is a member of the board of directors of the Virginia Math and Science Consortium. He serves on the advisory board of the Flora of Virginia project. He has been a teacher in the Valley Ridge Regional Governor's School. He was research mentor to the 2005 Discovery Channel Young Scientist of the Year and has directed 14 graduate students during his career. And that's in addition to the other credentials that he has, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Renfro.
Welcome, Dr. Renfro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to come here and talk with you today. I'd like to address the potential for industrial hemp production here. So you heard a little bit about the farming side. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities we have. But before I proceed with my remarks, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Charlie Wampler, who was a pioneer in Virginia agriculture. He was certainly gave us one who gave us a life of service to agriculture, service to the House of Delegates, service to the Commonwealth, to higher education in the state, and certainly to his community. And he will be very much missed. As you are well aware, there are many, many products that can be developed from hemp and are already on the markets worldwide. These are just some of the items that can be produced, and down at the bottom of those, people are already selling hemp-fed beef, beef dogs, everything from very rudimentary kinds of things to carbon nanosheet supercapacitors. There are lots and lots of products that are being developed from hemp. As far as trying to open up markets here in Virginia, we need to consider the value of hemp. The global hemp market's estimated somewhere around 800 million. This is from data from 2013. U.S. retail market around $500 million. When we think about markets for Virginia, and especially emerging markets, I think we've got three real opportunities. That's producing fiber, producing oilseed, and then pharmaceuticals. In terms of fiber, there is the bast fiber, which is the textile fiber. And right now, China dominates that market, and I don't think we're going to be competitive with them anytime in the short run. So, growing hemp for textiles, I don't think is really where Virginia needs to look. But the automobile biocomposites and other composite materials is an emerging market that we can very definitely capitalize on. The herd fiber from the xylem is used for animal bedding. We have a company here in Virginia, Old Dominion Hemp, who sells hemp herd for animal bedding. They have to import it from out of the country. Why can't we grow it and produce it for them right here? Hempcrete, fiberboard, other materials are made with this herd fiber. These are markets that can be developed pretty quickly with minimal investments in terms of developing the corporate infrastructure. And of course, you can use both bast and herd in fiber insulation products, hemp lime stucco, fiberboard, geotextiles, materials using for erosion control, sedimentation control, things like this. So these are all markets that could be developed rather rapidly within the Commonwealth. These are just a few of the automobile manufacturers that are currently using hemp fiber in their composite materials in cars because it's very lightweight, it's easy to mold. There are a number of environmental advantages to using this. Almost every European car has hemp already being used. So this is something that American car manufacturers would like to get more involved with, and there's a ready supply for us. In terms of hemp oil seeds, hemp hearts, for human food consumption, hemp has a lot to offer. Hemp flour is a gluten-free product. There are already hemp products for human consumption in Costco, in Target. So major distributors are carrying these products, but again, they're having to import this material from outside the United States rather than having us grow it here. Hemp oil has a very beneficial fatty acid ratio. It's been shown to be heart healthy, high in antioxidants. It has the what they call the golden ratio between the omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. It's one of the better oils for human consumption. In terms of animal feed, there have been studies that have shown it can improve the quality of eggs and laying hens. It also, there are some different studies, but there are some studies that indicate that it may improve some beef qualities. I think the story's still out on that. But the press cake is certainly high in protein. It still has some beneficial fatty acids, still has antioxidants. So the press cake can certainly be used as an animal food supplement. In terms of pharmaceuticals, there are over 100 cannabinoids that are produced by this plant. It's already been demonstrated to have medical benefits, and there are many more besides those I've listed here. Just to give you a little bit of insight into what other states are doing, there's a study that was carried out in Kentucky that looked at what would happen if they started developing processing plants there. You can see one processing facility would provide the full-time equivalent of 303 jobs, earning over $6 million, two processing or one processing, one pulp paper. You can see the estimates here. So there is some evidence that this would be stimulatory to the economy should we have these kind of facilities coming into the state. Just to give you a background on where they're at, they started out in 2014 with 33 acres. And 2017, they're estimated based on applications, they've approved up to 12,800 acres. Now, point this out just to show you where they were in 2014 is where we are now. Right, this past year, we put 30 acres into field production. So Virginia has an opportunity here to move out of the gate and get going rather quickly, or we're going to be left in other people's dust. Other people are moving ahead, and I don't think we want all the processing and everything going on in other states. The value of raw hemp imports In 2010, the United States imported $8.6 million from Canada. That's not including processed products, that's just the raw products. Now, this is probably a gross underestimate of what the actual demand is, because there are a lot of people that won't use hemp because they don't want to have to import. And there are also people who don't want to use hemp because the questions of legality and using the materials, so the demand is probably much higher than what is reflected in that figure. In terms of finished goods in 2013, you can see the different forms. Seeds, oil were a large portion of the market. Fiber, yarn, fabrics a little bit, but again here some close to $37 million imported goods in 2013 coming into the United States. Now, I did want to mention a little bit about the genetics of the plant, just to help you understand the differences between marijuana and hemp. From what we understand of the genetics right now, there is a set of genes that control the conversion of a precursor molecule into either THC, the psychoactive component of marijuana, or to CBD, which is a non-psychotic compound. And so you can end up with gene pairs where the industrial hemp would be the genotype VDBD, so you're only getting the CBD production, you're not getting THC. Marijuana growers, on the other hand, are interested in the VTBT genotype. They want to maximize the THC production and its derivatives. Because this is genetically controlled, this is established at the time of fertilization of the plant. So that if you have certified seed, such as we imported and used in our product, it has the genotype where it will not produce THC. And since this is established from seed set, and it's established by this pair of genes, this trait will not change during the life of the plant. So we don't have to worry that at some point in the growing cycle it's going to start upregulating, it's going to start producing THC, because we've got some shift in conditions or whatever. No, it's genetically controlled, and if we get certified seed, it's not going to produce THC. When we had our material analyzed, and the Department of Ag and Consumer Services had our material tested and analyzed, it came back less than 0.1% THC, which I assume is probably the threshold of detectability of the test. So again, hemp is very different than marijuana, and if you use certified seed, and you've got this genotype, you don't have to worry that it's suddenly going to become marijuana, or that conditions might cause it to start producing an unwanted chemical. That just doesn't happen. So the challenges we face in trying to move forward with hemp productivity in the Commonwealth is, one, the cost of imported seed. We need to be able to have seed certification, seed growers here in the United States. We need a certification program where we know the genetics of the plant and we can buy locally. Then we've got the whole chicken and egg thing, right? Farmers don't want to grow a crop if they can't sell it. In fact, I've been contacted by farmers all across the Commonwealth, from Northern Virginia, from down around Wise area to southeastern Virginia. I've got farmers all over the state calling us, emailing me, because they found out we were partnering with farmers and they want to join this effort. There is a great deal of interest in growing hemp in Virginia, I can tell you, from the farmers that have talked to me. But one farmer I was talking to, he said, okay, so tell me what I need to do to partner. And I said, okay, well, we've got to come up with an experimental design because it has to be part of a research program. So we've got to ask a legitimate science question. We need to have the land that's protected. We have to control access to who comes onto the property. Everybody involved, every family member, everybody who's coming in contact with the crop must be licensed, which means you have to go through a criminal background check, be fingerprinted. Then you're going to have to bear the cost of purchasing the seed, paying the border crossing fees, the transportation fees, because this isn't something you just ship on UPS or FedEx. We have to arrange special transportation for this. So then it has to come in, it has to be registered at the location. We have to maintain chain of custody to the site. You have to plant it, We have to make sure that the planter is all clean, there's no residual seed left in it or anything. You grow the crop, you pay for the fertilizer, you pay for irrigation, whatever's necessary. You harvest it, and he says, and then what do I do with it? I said, well, then we either use it on site or you destroy it. And he goes, well, thank you very much. Well, think about it. So, in our program, we tried to come up with what we didn't want to grow a crop just to destroy it. So we went with an oilseed crop so that we were able to press the seed, get the oil, Glenn convert that to biodiesel that we use on the farm. Pressed cake is being fed to animals on the farm. The stems are being baled, chopped, and used for animal bedding on the farm. So we were fortunate we were able to get 3 products out of it that we could use in place, because obviously there's no market. And markets won't be established without a crop supply. So we've got to try to coordinate these things as we go along. The regulations that are involved, obviously we had to register with DEA because this is a class Schedule 1 controlled substance. And so we have the state licensing, the criminal background checks. If we can't move this across state lines, that's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big barrier to try to develop these markets. We've been contacted by people from New York, from Connecticut, from Pennsylvania, from other states that want to get involved in the hemp business. Particularly, they have suggestions on how to take this product to the market. Unless we're able to move our product across state lines to them, that's going to be a problem. Now, we can try to attract all these businesses to Virginia and say, okay, bring your processing plants here and everything, but there are people that are already doing things in other states that we could tap into if we were able to move this product across state lines. We need to be able to sell it without all the handling restrictions. Right now, if we wanted to take our seed to a local mill and have them process it for oil, we couldn't do that unless they were licensed to handle the seed. So fortunately for me, and it's, my partners have been wonderful to work with. Jamie has been blessed to be able to work with 2 very experienced farmers, with Glenn Rhodes and Brian Walden. And Glenn has on his farm an oil press. So we were able to take care of that right here without having to try to go elsewhere. And obviously we need to delist it at the federal level. And so whatever we can do to urge our congressmen to, at the federal level, to get this delisted would be to our advantage. So there are some problems. And I'm not sure what the utility is of forcing our farmers to go through criminal background checks to grow an oil or fiber crop. To me, it makes no sense to treat our farmers as criminals, you know, to be run through the system this way. It seems very logical that something like a field registration system would make sense. I understand the Commonwealth would have an interest in knowing where the crop is planted. So you could do that simply by registering the fields. Again, I don't see the point of having farmers have to go through fingerprinting and criminal background checks just to grow an oil or a fiber crop. So we have some recommendations that we would like to see happen. We certainly want and need continued support for genetics research to optimize cultivars for growth in Virginia here. I would like to see a seed certification program established in Virginia so that we can grow our own seeds, have them certified as THC negligible, so that we can grow those without problems. I don't see the need to continue criminal background checks for growers. I'd like to see that eliminated. Whatever we can do to provide incentives for small business startups, I think would be great. And I think it would be very beneficial because we're probably talking about small farm operations initially. I mean, there are some large scale operators who would like to get involved in this, But I see hemp as a real opportunity for small farmers as well, particularly people who used to be involved in tobacco production and no longer are. This would be a way to get their land back into agriculture. 5 acres, 10 acres is still a significant amount of hemp being produced. If we were to support cooperatives, so small acreage farmers could come together and help market their goods, I think that would be great. We've already been talking with one individual from another state who said, if we could expand our farming base, he says, I will take all the fiber your farmers can produce. So, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'll take any questions you might have.
We have one question from Dr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Kentucky, how many acres does it take to support a plant? I mean, I know it's a chicken or the egg question, but what are we talking about? What type of acreage would support a Kentucky-sized plant that you showed?
That would be one large.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Renfro, could you, Delegate Ferris asked a question of the prior speaker about the concerns of marijuana getting mixed in with hemp, and you gave us a genetic analysis, but it seems to me that so much of the red tape seems to be still rooted in this concern that somehow marijuana is going to get grown next to it. Can you just give us a little bit more on just why that cannot happen?
So, the problem historically is because both marijuana and industrial hemp are the same species of plant, Cannabis sativa. Although there are taxonomists that are looking at that saying they've diverged enough now that we can legitimately call them separate species. But to give you another example, broccoli and Brussels sprouts are both the same species of plant. But it's pretty easy to tell the difference between broccoli and Brussels sprouts. One can tell the difference between industrial hemp and medical or recreational marijuana cultivars. Medical marijuana and recreational cultivars are grown to maximize vegetative productivity because the drugs are produced in trichomes, little hairs, on the leaves and primarily the female flower buds. So they want them to be as compact and bushy as it can be to maximize the vegetative growth that they're collecting, the young leaves and the buds. Hemp, on the other hand, we're interested in either the oil, so we're letting it go to seed, or we're interested in the fiber, which means we want to maximize stem growth. So in terms of allocating carbon within the plant, you're either trying to grow a small bushy plant or a tall fiber plant. And you put those side by side, you're going to recognize the difference. Anybody who's trying to hide recreational marijuana in a hemp field, they're going to stick out just like broccoli would for Brussels sprouts. So I don't think it's as big an issue as some people make it out to be. The problem is, one of the problems I see is recognition of it, and we've been talking about this. There's a need for a different kind of chemical detection. Right now, drug sniffing dogs, they're not hitting on the THC. They're hitting on some other compound from the plant, probably some of the cannabinoids. So retraining our drug sniffing dogs or coming up with an in-field chemical test or something to distinguish hemp from marijuana is the issue. In addition to seed certification, we also need product certification so that if a farmer grows industrial hemp on the farm and he wants to ship it across state lines, we need somebody to certify and say, this is hemp, this is not marijuana. So if it's going across and gets checked at anywhere, it's not an issue for the farmer.
Dr. Winfrey, thank you so much for coming down today. We're running low on time. We're going to lose our quorum here. So we next get Delegate Yost to introduce. So, welcome, sir, Dr. Fike. Thank you for being here this morning. Give them 2 minutes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first I want to thank you all. I did not realize this would still be a conversation taking place 2 years from now. When we started this
I think it was your
conversation
bill
in
that started all this.
It was, actually. Daddy Hemp, I guess, is my nickname. But it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Fike. He's an associate professor in agroforestry at Virginia Tech and was one of the lead researchers for the 3 plots that were, or the 3 research programs that was accepted by VDEX back in the spring of last year. And he has promised to make it quick, so we don't want to trespass on the committee's time any more than we have to. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here.
I'm sorry, it came out Hemp Hooray. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities with this crop, but there are still quite a great deal of questions. As was already discussed, we have 3 research plots in Virginia Tech's efforts. The orange dot would be Virginia State's, and they're doing comparable work in terms of looking at planting varieties and dates. Just real quickly, you can see the top slide with the grain crop, that's generally planted at a lower density, and so there's more opportunity for weed invasion, but what you're trying to do is give that plant an opportunity to flower out, so there's more productive grain. The lower crop for fiber, planted at a higher density, those crops cover very quickly and don't have a whole lot of weed pressure. This is at Orange, Virginia. The next site, Southern Piedmont, and it's very difficult to see what you've got is a dual-purpose variety material that can be used for either grain or fiber in this tech trial. And they harvested some of the grain out. They also left some for redding. And while there was no apparent wildlife issues at Mr. Rhodes' farm, we did see a lot of finches. We saw a lot of doves. We did have deer pressure. What do these different sites mean for yield? So at the Southern Piedmont, we were looking at nitrogen response. So that's the very right column, Blackstone. And you can see the responses of one variety to nitrogen. We do get some increase, but actually reasonable, I shouldn't say reasonable, but there's a bit of tonnage there even with no nitrogen. On the left side, you see a number of varieties that we tested at Orange and then at Blacksburg, and you can see the tons per acre. At Orange, even though we had a week or 2 earlier planting date, there were substantially lower yields than what we could do at Blacksburg. We actually planted in July, which would not be recommended, but that's when we had seed available to us and a good growing window. So these yields won't be agronomically viable. These are some data on economics of grain from Kentucky. I will just bypass that in the interest of time. There is the opportunity to grow this crop for medicinals. We have not done that in Virginia. Why would we do that, however? There's a whole host of potential benefits. The standard for stopping seizures is just not having any seizures for anti-seizure medication, but you can dope somebody up very badly and they have no seizures and you've met that obligation. And I've had people come to me and say, look, we want to do something with cannabis because it has this anti-seizure effect. Many people who have cancer treatments have a bit of nausea. Another company has contacted me and said we can extract this material and provide it to people. It will stop their nausea before, it would not stop the nausea, it would suppress the nausea before it ever starts. Now, another company that I talked with this past week said they grew 30 acres. They generated somewhere between 50 and 60,000 pounds. They were in Oregon. They shipped that plant material to California, where it went to the Bay Area, and it was used in pharmaceutical industries, and they sold it for $30 million. So there's a lot of questions here. You say, wow, that's a lot of money. This next gentleman is Dr. David Williams. He's talking with Senator Mitch McConnell. Dr. Williams is kind of considered the granddaddy of agronomic efforts with him. And he and I talked a lot, and we've had some, I get different flavors. So this goes back to the hemp hooray question. Dr. Williams thinks grain is not going to happen.
because it's not flying off the shelf. Well, would you go buy something at $14 a pound right now? You probably wouldn't. But as more people produce grain, that cost at the store is going to come down. So what's the return? Ultimately, it may be something that's comparable to corn and soybeans. That's going to be the market it's competing with. And then the question is going to be, how does it fit in those rotations? Dr. Williams doesn't think the medical side is that big of a deal, because he said we have a lot of people growing it in Kentucky and they don't even have a place to process it. So, you know, the information I'm getting from him versus people who are doing it in California or Oregon is a little bit different. These numbers show not only the approved processors on the very left, that 40 is where they are right now. They have about 209 approved growers for 2017. You see the number of acres that are contracted versus the acres grown, so we don't know how many acres will be grown in 2017, but they have about 12,000 contracted, and it's expected that about half of that is going to go to fiber plants. They have 2 existing fiber plants. One company owns 2 existing fiber plants in Kentucky. This is grain data from Canada, and you can see what happens. These markets take off, and there's not a lot of stability there. Everybody wants to grow. Where does it go? We don't know, so then it crashes, and they've gone through some of that. You can see the same sort of data from Europe, where Spain got heavily into this. Spain would be the great peak earlier on. But you can see as we get out, there are more countries getting into this business, and the production of hemp is going up. There are some pest issues. We have, there's probably at least a half dozen corn earworm, what else I got here? Yellow-striped armyworm, tiger moth, caterpillar, brown marmorated stink bug, June bugs, or excuse me, Japanese beetles. We have a whole host. I didn't spray anything, and that was a great thing for me, because the entomologist went out and he saw all that stuff, and he just went crazy. He's so excited to go in and do entomological research. Why is this important? If I'm growing this for medical purposes, many of those folks do not want any spray on that. So how are we going to manage these things? So some research needs. Are we going to grow this for grain, fiber, forage? There's even some looking at that. For essential oils. Varieties. Mr. Rose talked about shatter. Well, we might be able to have varieties that have low level of shatter so we can harvest at dry seed. In Europe, many countries are harvesting at 30% moisture, and then they have to dry that down. And we have a lot of producers who might be able to handle the grain, but they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to get that grain to where they can store it successfully. Agronomic management. Blah, 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 blah. Look, you're out of time. I'm out of time. I'll stop. One last question. Where does it fit with the existing cropping systems? The other questions, it's just from the research side, off the farm, markets and scale, consumer acceptance. Maybe part of the reason why there's not greater demand, again, is because some of these uncertainties that Dr. Renfro was talking about, but also simply because the supply and the knowledge in the consumer base is just not there. So we have a lot of other questions about economics. The ability to move these crops from one place to another would be something that would be very helpful, and I think that you could really make an impact on. I'll leave one last slide after this. I recently published an article about industrial hemp. We have a long history with this crop, 8,000 to 10,000 years of use, quite frankly. And kind of the bottom line in this paper, and I'd be happy to share this paper with you if you want it. The bottom line is this last sentence: is, although full of promise, given its numerous potential benefits and uses, building markets for these products will be critical and part of hemp's development into a useful agronomic species for U.S. growers. So we need a little bit of work there. I just want to thank you for all the support you've given in the past, and I'll leave it there.
Sir, thank all 3 of you for coming down. So if you could, I don't know if time allows, to stick around, because I'm sure after we get through a meeting, some of the members might want to come and talk with me again. Thank you for coming down this morning. So we're going to start and do what we were here to do. To start with is start with subcommittee reports, and we'll start with the Chesapeake delegate report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us, first bill we have up is House Bill 1619. It directs the State Water Control Board to incorporate the general permit procedures by which it will, every 10 years, review load allocations to determine whether changes in the use of the facility have halted or reduced nutrient discharges, and determine prior to reissuing the general permit the need for reallocations based on a variety of factors, including changes in treatment technology and land use. Subcommittee recommended reporting 7-0. I so move.
Have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1619. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote, please do so on the, clerk will close the roll. It passes 13-0.
Mr. Speaker, or, sorry, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1680, there is a substitute.
So we pass that to substitute. Have a motion on substitute. Have a motion and a second on substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1680 establishes 4 advisory committees to make recommendations to the Marine Resources Commission on issues relating to management of respectively crab, finfish, shellfish, and habitat. Subcommittee recommends reporting 7-0, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1680. Any questions? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote, please do so by roll. Clerk will close the roll. 1680 reports 13-0.
Mr. Chairman, next before us is House Bill 2009. It authorizes the hiring of certified third-party professionals to administer any or all aspects of the program for the management of stormwater and erosion. There was an amendment to that.
The report amendment, please.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2009, on page 2, line 90, after the word review, strike inspection and insert and inspection but not including. So that line would read, including plan review and inspection, but not including enforcement. And the same amendment is made on page 4, line 201.
So, Mr. Duncan Wiltshire, you want to move the amendment?
Yeah, so moved.
Second. We have a motion, a second to accept the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee recommends reporting as amended 6-0, and I so move.
All right, I have a motion, do I have a second? Have a motion, a second to report House Bill 2009. Any questions? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 2009 reports 13-0. You know, for the audience out there, they think that this is a steamroller. All the work was done in some committees. We did move pretty fast here in full, so, all right.
Mr. Chairman, we have House Bill 2076, and there is I'd like to offer an amendment, please.
All right, please.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2076 on page 3, at the top of the page, line 121. After the word all, insert the word final. So it reads, require that all final plan elements, etc. And the same amendment is to be made on page 5, on line 246, after the word all, insert the word final.
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendment.
Do we have a second? We have a motion, a second to accept the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2076 directs the State Water Control Board to adopt regulations requiring all plant elements, specifications, and calculations whose preparation requires a license in engineering, architecture, soil scientist, or related profession to be signed and sealed by a licensed professional. Subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second to report House Bill 2076. Any questions? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 2076 reports 13-0.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2297 was an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 2297, the amendment is a little bit complicated, but it's easy to explain. If you look in subsection A, lines 12 through 20, you'll see that there are 3 numbered items. This amendment strikes the first item, which reads, "The manager or administrator of the county or city in which the ground applied for lies," and it renumbers the following items accordingly.
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendment.
I have a motion and a second on the amendments to House Bill 2297. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm just curious, could we have an explanation why the local government officials are being taken out of the notification? The reason that that was struck is because we're talking about state body, and a town or locality has no authority over state body. And we're afraid that if we send a notice to a town or city, that they will then start zoning procedures to try to affect ground or bottom ground that they have no authority over. So industry had a pains with that.
Mr. Chairman, follow?
Yes, please.
And I guess to delegate lots of property. The existing law says they shall be posted and located on the snow. Has this been a problem up to this point?
We're trying to update this procedure, Mr. Chairman. Right now, you have to post it at the courthouse, and we're trying to bring it up into this century. This also changed from, the changes from 4 weeks in the newspaper, which is very expensive, to 2 weeks, but it also puts it on the website. So it is visible to anyone that wants to see it.
Any further questions? All right, we have a motion and a second to report House Bill 2297. I got again, a letter from the speaker that the motion needs to be to report and refer to appropriations.
Not so moved.
All right, we have a motion to send HB 2297, if we approve it, to appropriations. All of those wishing to vote, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. That was explain that.
Okay, smart man. Hey, could someone explain why we need, again, as we're updating to the electronic age, it's required by registered or certified mail, which I got a letter from a local hospital in the mail last week, and it costs $6.50 to send me that letter, certified. I'm curious why we need it versus why not just acknowledgement electronically or something of that nature.
Mr. Chairman, that has historically been the case, and all those expenses are borne by the applicant for the lease. All the newspaper, all that's borne by the applicant of the lease. I think the reason this is gonna go to appropriations is because the Marine Resources has determined to handle this, they're gonna need an extra person. I'm not so sure they can defend that at appropriations, but that's how they've written it.
All right, any further questions? All right, all those wishing to vote on HB 2297, please do so. Zoe Wares. All right, got you. All right, please, clerk, close the roll. House Bill 2297, reports.
Mr. Chairman, we have House Bill 2298. It reduces from 205 feet to 105 feet the minimum low water shore front that makes the landowner eligible to apply for riparian planting grounds. Assignment by the Commissioner of the Marine Resources Commission. Subcommittee recommends reporting 6-0, reporting and referring to appropriations and assuming.
Yes,
There is an amendment I would like to add to it before it gets referred. And I think Scott has the amendment.
Scott, just a substitute. tell us what's different than what saw originally.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This has been a process of negotiations between the Lynn Haven and Virginia Beach and the shellfish growers. This is a riparian lease, and there are some riparian leaseholders that are using land in the Lynn Haven for blocking dredging projects instead of for propagating oysters. And I think this is an amendment that we can put on that might solve some of that problem. It needs to be Lynn Haven specific. Is that correct, Scott? It's going to be Lynn Haven specific, and it sunsets in 2019. And the reason for the sunset in 2019 is hopefully by then, our Habitat Committee can take care of these issues without bringing them to Richmond.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first time I've seen this, but where in this substitute is it Lynn Haven specific?
We're going to have so what we're looking to do is to accept this substitute and make an amendment to the substitute. Okay, because I don't see the 2019 either. All right, so. They confer. So do you want to let this go by for?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. If we pass it by for the day, there's a question about germaneness with this, this amendment, and I want to make sure it is specific to the Lynn Haven, and it does sunset out.
All right, so with no objection, House Bill 2298 will go back with that.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you for your work. All right, next we go to Delegate Evans, the Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I guess the first bill will take up the House Bill 1509, which increases the bond from $200 to $1,000 per acre to a fixed amount of $3,000 per acre, furnished by operators on mining land. It was moved to report from subcommittee. There was an amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Got your report from the committee.
So the First Amendment on page 1, line 46. After subsection A of, strike section 45.1-186.3 and insert section 45.1-186.4. On page 2, on line 60, after from reclamation, we're going to strike all of the section, or clause 2, starting with the reclamation primarily benefits.
That's on line 62.
Line 60, I believe.
Okay. So we striking from line 60, is that to the line?
Yes.
Down to where the rest of the paragraph?
Just the clause 2. So the reclamation primarily benefits the health, safety, or environmental values of the community or area in which the land is located. Strike all of that.
Okay. All right, you got it?
And there's one more. On line 94 on page 2. After for the, strike purposes of holding bonds collected under sections 45.1-183 and 45.1-185.
Striking this.
Striking this. Keep striking and reclaiming lands disturbed by mining operations. All of that will be stricken, and we're going to insert reclamation of mining operations pursuant to section 45.1-186.4. 197.12. Can you repeat that if needed?
Mr. Chairman, I move those amendments.
We have motion on the amendments. Do we have a second? All right.
The bill was reported as amended from subcommittee 8 to 0, and I so move.
Okay. Do we, Delegate Webb, do you have a question?
That was a lot of amendments, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious as to why. Were they a lot of technical corrections, et cetera? I guess that would be a question for the patron. I apologize.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think DMME is here and probably give a more cogent summary than I could on the fly right now. So I'd ask them if it is an agency bill. It's raising a floor that hasn't been raised since 1978. It's the general purpose of it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Weber, Michael Skiffington with DME. They are largely technical amendments correcting drafting errors.
Thank you.
Sir, are you there? So, line 29, so reading that currently paying $1,000 an acre, and then we're going to go to $3,000 an acre?
Yes, sir.
That's a pretty good jump. Why are we doing it?
That amount hasn't been risen since the 1970s, and current reclamation costs average about $6,000 an acre. So those bonds only apply to about 13% of the permits we have in our mineral mining program, and there's no other source of revenue available to reclaim in the event the operators go out of business. So it's on this, it would be on the Commonwealth if that situation were to happen. So increasing the bonds reduces the risk to the Commonwealth.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes,
What was the position of the operators on this?
We work very closely with the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance, and they are in support of the bill.
Thank you. I have a computer malfunction here, so if you have a question, you have to raise your hand. So any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, it's not a question, but a comment. This is only for new, I guess it is a question, because this is only for new operations, is that correct? Existing mines are still under the...
It would apply to new operators, operators with 5 years or less experience. When they hit that 5-year mark under existing law, the bonds are refunded to them, and they are automatically enrolled in a low-cost risk pool.
Any further questions? Okay, so House Bill 1509 is amended. You made a motion to, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those wishing to vote on 1509, please do so. All right, so we will close the roll of 1509 and it reports 14 to 2. Thank you.
Next bill, Mr. Chairman, is House Bill 1547, and that basically adds the two cemeteries, East End Cemetery in Henrico and Evergreen Cemetery in Richmond City, to receive funding at the rate of $5 per grave to help with maintenance. Mr. Chairman, both of these cemeteries are historical African American cemeteries, and it was reported from subcommittee to report and refer to appropriations 9 to 0, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second to report and refer House Bill 1547. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote on HB 1547, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 1547, 16 to 0.
Next, Mr. Chairman, is House Bill 1562, Delegate Cole's bill, and there is a substitute, and I move the substitute.
Have a motion on the substitute. Do we have a second? All those wishing to accept the substitute say aye. Opposed? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 1562 is a dam safety bill that authorizes authorizes DCR to disperse monies from the Dam Safety Fund to common interest communities that own dams. The substitute was reported from Subcommittee 4 to 3, and I so move.
Cole, you want to say anything about the 4-3?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill is brought to allow the department to consider applications for loans or grants from private dams. These are communities that maintain and own dams that were in fine shape until a few years ago when we passed new, more stringent standards. So all of a sudden, the dams were no longer in compliance through no fault of their own. And I think it's reasonable for us to try to lend a helping hand since, again, through no fault of their own, these dams are no longer compliant with the new standards. And so I would ask the committee to report the legislation. It does not compel the department to provide any loans or grants to these organizations. It simply allows them to consider an application.
Dr. Cole, you got a question, Dr. Sullivan, just to,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman. And I had a chance to talk with Delegate Cole about an hour ago, and my concern was that now you have private that is competing with public dams, and so we need to make sure that we need to get our own house in order before we provide that funding to private. And I guess if there's anybody from DCR here who can just kind of assure me that as we go through and consider grants and loans, because again, this is no longer a grant, we're actually just giving the money, that indeed the prioritization go towards the public dams first, that would be helpful.
anyone from DCR here? See you on item 4. Mr. Chairman. Okay, Delegate, does that answer your question?
Mr. Chairman, I guess if Mr. Cole can assure me that that's kind of his understanding.
That would be my understanding. I would think the only case, where that might not become true, and DCR would, they're the ones that control and make the decisions with those. But perhaps there may be a dam somewhere that's an imminent public threat or something like that may bump up their priority. But I don't know. I'm not familiar with the criteria DCR uses in their current list. But if somebody wanted to make an amendment to give public dams a priority in the program, I would not object to that.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm good for the time being. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Delegate Amendment's got one now, so.
Okay.
No, Mr. Chairman, actually I don't, because I think what the individuals on the committee should look at is the underlying bill is that these are to protect the public safety and welfare. And all this bill does is it recognizes that many of our private HOA communities that are a private entity per se, just not an individual, have these dams, which if they fail, will be a potential threat to public safety below the dam. And this is just now allowing them, in order to protect the public safety, they can be considered a private entity, just as I'm aware of one property owner in my particular jurisdiction. There's an old mill dam, they live on the property, and so they're already potentially eligible for these grants if they make application. I think it just makes common sense that when you have a much larger dam, and we'll use as an example Lake of the Woods, that if that dam were to fail while it's owned by the HOA, you've got tremendous impact on landowners below that dam, should they not be in consideration. So I think the bill is in fine shape as the patron has had it amended. I hope the committee will look favorably upon the bill as written.
Seeing no further questions, all those wishing to vote on the substitute for House Bill 1562, please do so. Clerk, will you close the roll? All right, sorry, House Bill 1562 was 13-2. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
House Bill 1679, Delegate Robinson's bill, that authorizes DMME to require disclosure of chemical ingredients, names, and abstract numbers, and the concentration of chemicals used in the fracking of natural gas and oil. Under the bill, DME will make available to the public all disclosed chemical information, subject only to protecting legitimate trade secrets. The bill authorizes DME to release all chemical information to first responders and other emergency personnel in the event of an emergency. It was moved to report, 4-2 from subcommittee, and I so move.
So we are being distributed an amendment. So, Dr. Robinson, you will tell us about the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill will do is DME went through like a 3-year process of developing regulations that the governor signed into effect in December. And what this bill does, it just codifies the new requirements for disclosure to the Department of Mines and Minerals and of all the chemicals used in completion of natural gas and oil wells in Virginia. Do you want me to explain the amendment first, or what the bill does?
Okay. You know what the bill does.
Okay, so what the amendment just does is in agreement with, kind of to work together on this bill, the industry has agreed to release, at the time of permit, within 7 days of the permit, to release to the localities the data safety sheet, and I just handed one out that would at least give them some protection of what all the chemicals are and what they would be doing in cases of an emergency. And it will be, it will just be a requirement with the permit at the time it's being submitted.
Yes, Dr. Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Brady?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, you said that the governor worked on these regs. Is his office okay with what looks like the creation of a fairly large FOIA loophole that basically automatically bars access to chemicals used in fracking operations without any consideration for the risks of public health or safety?
I had a second bill, yes, and that went through general laws yesterday and was passed out. It was Bill 1678 and had to do with the FOIA and what was restricted under FOIA, and the industry and compromise. All chemical names and all chemical abstracts will be FOIAble. The only thing that the FOIA will actually now protect is just the actual recipe of those chemicals. So therefore, the way this is stated is that those chemicals will be, they're FOIAble. So this just says that anything that's FOIAble, yes, it can be. What's not FOIAble is protected.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question, please. Delegate, has the governor signed off on the idea that there's a loophole for trade secrets?
Oh, well, if the governor didn't sign off,
Well,
forget
no,
about it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, hold on.
Mr. Chairman? My answer to that would be,
Yeah, the reason I bring that up, besides the rudeness from my colleague over there, was that she alluded to the fact that this is part of a long time communication and negotiation between the governor's office, industry, and her office.
I don't think that's really what my statement was. There has been a lot of talk between the industry and the governor's office and the environmental groups. What was agreed upon in those discussion was that the industry was willing to give up the chemical names, chemical abstracts. Is the governor's office on board with this? No.
Follow-up questions?
Yes, Doug Orr.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the amendment and why it was even needed with the existing language I see on lines 86 of the bill. So I'm wondering if it might be wise if, because of other questions that have come up with this, went back to the subcommittee. And therefore I move to go by for the day, at the chairman's discretion, either refer it back to subcommittee or have it for our next full committee meeting.
I agree. I think that we need to send it back to sub, so we'll do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This afternoon.
Hmm?
We meet this afternoon. Correct.
Thank you.
You come this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, next we have House Bill 1740, Delegate Minshew's bill, and that transfers authority to create or enlarge sanitary districts from the Circuit Court to the Board of Supervisors. The bill requires the local governing body to have a public hearing to determine whether action is necessary. It also requires that 50% of those property owners who are affected be in support. It was moved to report from subcommittee 6-1, and I so move.
All right, House Bill 1740 is, do I have a second on 1740? Second on 1740. Anyone want to speak? Doug Lopez? You want to vote here in a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what was the vote in subcommittee?
6-1.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1740. All those wishing to do so, please do so. All right, clerk will close the roll. 1740 reports 14-1.
All right, next, Mr. Chairman, we have House Bill 2200, Delegate Quinn, and that simply removes the sunset of the Coal Surface Mining Reclamation Fund. It was moved to report from subcommittee 8-0, and I so move.
Have a second? All right, House Bill 2200, seeing no questions, all those wishing to vote, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. 2200 reports 15-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And lastly, everybody's favorite bill in the subcommittee was House Bill 2254. And that clarifies how the members of the Tobacco Board are appointed, and also changes the assessment from 20 cents to 40 cents per 100 pounds. And there's a substitute, and I move the substitute.
All right, we have a substitute. Have a motion. A second for substitute on House Bill 2254. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, Delegate Evans.
The substitute was reported from the subcommittee from 6-0, and I so move. And Mr. Chairman, we actually have a group of tobacco growers here. Maybe they stand and be recognized.
Yeah, thank y'all. All right, so we have a motion to accept the substitute on House Bill 2254. Doug Lloyd? Question?
Not on this one.
Okay. All right, so all those wishing to vote, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. 2254 reports 15-0.
That concludes our committee report.
All right, thank you, sir. Thanks for your work. All right, next is Delegate Knight and Agricultural Subcommittee.
Yes, sir, in Agriculture Subcommittee, we had a fair amount of bills. We only had 4 of them that made it out. First is House Bill 1477, Delegate Orrock, cats and dogs lifetime licenses. And Mr. Chairman, it's no surprise to you, the delegate amended his own bill. So I got some amendments before us.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 1477, page 1, on line 38, near the end of the line, where it says, any ordinance may provide for a license tax. Strike the letter A and insert an annual, so that it may provide for an annual license tax. And on page 1, line 53, after the word current, at the end of that sentence, insert a new sentence reading, such an ordinance may require that the dog or cat be permanently fitted with an identifying microchip registered to the owner.
I'll move the amendments. Mr. Chairman, could Scott report the first one again, please?
Mr. Chairman, the first amendment is on page 1, line 38, near the end of the line, the letter A. stricken and replaced with an annual.
So we have a motion and a second on the amendments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, what this does is it creates an annual license, and there's ways to put in there where it has to be, you can't transfer it to another dog if your first dog dies, and it also puts in there you may be able to put a microchip in there, but we thoroughly vetted this. We recommended to the full committee to report out 7-0, and I so moved.
All right, Delegate Ort. All right, so Delegate Bolden.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Before I vote on a microchip bill, which could get almost anybody up here in trouble, could somebody please just describe again what it is that the local government can and cannot require with respect to microchipping an animal?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, you need to know this will not involve microchipping politicians, but it just, as another tool local government may enact, they may make as a condition, and this is on made by local ordinance, may make as a condition for an individual to be able to secure a lifetime license for their animal, that they would also have to microchip the animal. Purely permissive. If local government doesn't do this, then nothing changes about the existing annual license fees that local governments would do. But this just gives them that tool if they care to enact it at the local level.
So Mr. Chairman, just to clarify again, if you don't want to have a microchip, you can still just do the annual and, all right, very good, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
But then they can't get the lifetime license without a microchip.
That would be an option that local governments could affect, but it would have to be approved by the local ordinance process to make that condition.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, all those wishing to vote on HB 1477 as amended, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 1477 reports 15-0.
Mr. Chairman, the next bill is House Bill 1520. I was a patron. We have a substitute. And, I would move the substitute as soon as it gets passed out and looked at.
Have a motion to accept substitute. Second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Yes, sir. What this bill does, we had the bill was amended, we just put it in substitute form, it was cleaner. What it does is it allows ethanol-free gas to be used on farms. We have Richmond area, Northern Virginia area, and Hampton Roads area that are on these pollution control, and they have to use ethanol gas. Any farmers know, we did this for marinas a couple of years ago. We're doing it for farms now. Anyone that has a farm motor that's gasoline, that the gas sits in it for a while, ethanol tends to break down to hoses and gaskets. So we put this in, but it's only for on-farm sale and delivery. So you have to have your own tank on your own farm, and it has to be sold to a bona fide farmer. So it was recommended for approval 7-0, and I so moved.
All right, any questions? Seeing none, all those wishing to vote on the substitute for 1520, please do so. Clerk will close the roll. 1520 substitute reports 15-0.
Yes, sir. Our next bill is House Bill 1793, Delegate Ferris. We have amendments. I'd move the amendments after they're read.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 1793, the amendment would take the new language that's shown on line 38 and move it up to line 28, near the end of that line, so that line 28 would read, "The provisions of this subsection shall not apply to any fires which may be set to prevent damage to orchards or vineyards by frost or freezing temperatures, or to be set on federal lands."
I move the amendments.
Motion is second to accept the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
what Delegate Ferris brought his bill is there's a prohibition of having fires between February 15th and April 30th. And we have orchards and vineyards in the state of Virginia that sometimes we have freezing temperatures and they have the dead matter, that he would like to be able to put this legislation in where they could set fire to keep the frost from burning this. And we heard from the orchards and vineyards and wineries and stuff that were in support of this bill. So the subcommittee recommended approving 7-0, and I so move.
Do I have a second? Second. All right, have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1793. Seeing no questions, all those wishing to vote, please do so. All right, clerk will close the roll. 1793 reports 15-0.
And Mr. Chairman, our next bill is House Bill 2211, Delegate Rush. It has to do with the tobacco indemnification and community revitalization fund investment of assets. What they wanted to do was consider taking away from the state treasurer and allowing them to invest these funds. They think they can get a better interest rate. And we had a letter knowing that this was going to go to appropriations, probably, of course, to the subcommittee of agriculture and appropriations, so we can more thoroughly vet it since it has to do with dollar bills. So the subcommittee recommended reporting and referring to the Committee on Appropriations by 7-0 vote, and I so move.
All right, do I have a second? All right, any discussion? Yes, Doug Lawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not sit on the Ag Subcommittee, so I didn't get a substantive discussion. What was the reason that this entity was thought to be able to get a better rate than the state treasurer?
Well, they seem to think that the state's rate had been underperforming the last few years, and they seem to think that they could get a better rate. And we on the agricultural subcommittee there didn't have quite the expertise that appropriations does. That's why we wanted to ship it up to the next floor.
That anticipates my next question, which is, where are the alternatives and how do we do this in other places in the code and the treasurer? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So your motion is to report
And refer to appropriations.
and refer to appropriations. All those wishing to vote and refer, please do so.
And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my subcommittee's report.
All right, clerk will close the roll on 2211, and it reports 15-0. So thank y'all all. Let's just go a little homework here. The Ag Sub, we've got 6 bills left. Chesapeake, you have 15 left, and Natural Resources, you have 9. So we have, how many more full meetings? We have one more full meeting before crossover. So the reason we have Ag, you have one more. Sub, Chesapeake, you only have one more. Yeah, so you only have one. So we need quorums at those meetings to make sure that we keep this process moving. So please, if you cannot, if you have a conflict or something, contact my office and let me know so we can make sure that we have a quorum and set things. Any further discussion? Again, thank you, gentlemen, for making the trip down. For staying.